Hey everybody, Tim here again. This video here I want to talk a little bit about Tinwork. I'm going to start on some of the Tinwork basics that I do, and I'll do more videos along the way here, but I'm going to just give you highlights on how I do this stuff, make it a little bit easier for me and a little bit easier for you. Show you some of the little parts and pieces I use and take it from there. My tool tray is a little bit of a mess, but you'll get the idea as we go through here. So follow along. Here goes nothing. Okay, this is Greg's car. All of the Tinwork is cut and fit in it. Okay, you can see all the clecos. And these cars I use steel up front in the floors. Typically, if a car has one seat, I'll do the passenger side floor out of aluminum. But I've had stuff come up off the track and through the floorboards in my cars in the past. So that little piece of steel there helps a lot. Keeps things from going in your feet. You know, any like explosions, you're running stuff over, it's a lot less likely for it to come through the steel than it is the aluminum. So that's why I do that. In getting in and out of the car, you weld these floors in and they just last a lot longer. If you were to put aluminum over there in the driver's side of the car, in a couple of years you'd be replacing it because you have it all bent up. So then underneath the seats, aluminum, because you know you don't touch there much. In this car, you'll notice there's no bead rolling in this yet. I do bead rolling last so that I can make sure all my lines line up and everything looks good. I try not to get too carried away with bead rolling. To me, it's more about function. Make the panel stiffer than it is, you know, make it look pretty. Guys can go out and they can do all that fancy stuff, and that's fine with me. I'm trying to save the customer money by just making it function. You know, you go out there and put a fancy design in it, and they look cool. Don't get me wrong, they look cool, but you know, it's 3 or 4 hours worth of work that I can, you know, save the customer. So here we go on this. Transmission is covered up. Tunnel's all 40. I've slip rolled this, and like I say, nothing's finished. It just fits in the car. I round the corners and I try to take care of the edges, but as far as bead rolling goes, like this flange here, I'll tip this in my sheet metal brake, bend that down, and I don't know if you can see in there, but I've got a step right there, so that'll lay down in there nice and tight when it's all done. As I do the same thing here, you can see right there, there's a step in the steel, so the panels lay flush when they're finished. And on these edges like this here, I use a step flange and I roll that. Like this one here is a 1/4 inch, but then on the door panels, like here, I did them at 3/8 of an inch. The reason why I do that on the door panel like this is to keep the panel from being wobbly. I used to bend it with a brake on the edge, but then the rivet would disform the panel, and that's what I'm trying to avoid with all this. The hole spacing on these are 6 inches apart. Basically just got to hold the panel on there, and I'll put some dabs of silicone behind that panel to keep it from rattling. And of course it'll have bead rolls in the middle. In the back, even though this is a ladder bar car, I put a rear firewall in it just to make the transition for the tunnel a little bit easier to do. I form a flange, and you can see right there that you smash rivets there to hold like a 1-inch flange that I stretch to get to fit the back panel. It just gives me a lot better fit. If you make that panel flat, it has the chance of hitting on the top of the ladder bars, and also fitting, like I say, fitting that tunnel in there. The piece ends up being real long, and they tend to sag in the middle, which is a pain. So if you'll see here, I've got some steps in there so I can get this stuff around the tubing. Okay, there's one there, and then there's one up there in that panel, and that's basically just to get it around those pieces of tubing. And I try to leave them fit a little bit loose so that they're not beating and banging and scratching the car up when you're putting it together for the final time. So inside, basically, It's all the same. Like I say, I do bead roll these pieces to get them so I can weld them in. And like I say, I don't get carried away, just enough to add some strength to them. Firewall is a little bit different. I'll walk around the front and show you that. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to show you the transmission. This flange here, this piece here, the adapter I put in so it's easier to service the transmission and the clutch. You know, you get the bell housing off easier. Where those clecos are, there'll be Zeus fasteners. And that piece will remove, so it makes the hole in the firewall bigger. As do these pieces remove here. They come out so that you can do the same thing. On this side over here, I still have to step flange that. But like I say, I am, you know, everything's basically just fit in the car. So I try to make it real easy to service. You know, the tunnel comes out easy and those pieces come out easy so you can get the trans out, because with a clutch car, you spend a lot of time working on the clutch, of course. So I'll show you the front end. Out here you can see how that piece comes out and makes a bigger hole so you get the bell housing out easier. And as well, you can see I step flanged it right there as well. There's a step flange here, step flange here, step flange here. I do it on the outside the same way. I mean, it's a little bit of a pain to do this. As you can see, this is like two different pieces out here, and it's basically get around the tubing and everything else. When it's all done, you know, it'll sort of all blend in. Up in the top, let's see if we can show you this. We put a steel flange into the car that we could attach this upper part of the firewall to fill this in. So that all turned out pretty good. And then there's some stuff I want to show you in the trunk. So let's go back this way. I showed you the seams to clear the tubes. And what I do when I'm doing this, and I'm hoping you can see this okay, I believe you can, is I'll get the piece roughed in, figure out where I want my line at, which is here, and I'll step flange this one. This is like 3/4 of an inch right here, and then I bend a 1/2 inch flange here, and this is to keep the panel from wobbling, because what happens if you don't put this rib on here, the panels will vibrate and they'll oil can and they'll warp up. So I put that step flange anywhere I got a split like that, just to strengthen up the seam to sort of act like a rib. So as I said before, we've got all this stuff fit in. I've showed you the trunk already, so all the holes are drilled, all laid out. And I believe I've mentioned before, the aluminum that I buy, I get from Stock Car Steel and Aluminum. It's painted and it's masked. This has got like a PVC masking on it, if you guys don't know that, so that you can write on it, like draw your lines. And then when you're done, you peel the masking off and it's a glossy black finish underneath. So in that point, you have to, of course, the wheel tubs are mill finish. And there's, you know, these pieces here are mill finish. They'll all have to be painted to match the black tin, but it looks really good when it's done. It's like, you know, use a etch primer on it and then single stage black, and it looks great. These pieces out here, being they're welded in, they'll powder coat. So whatever the color of the chassis is, and I believe they're going to do black here. So like I say, I just wanted to show you that. I do all my step flanging and drilling and everything, get all that stuff done around the corners and try to make everything line up nice. And then as I pull it out a couple pieces at a time, I'll drill holes for the Zeus fasteners, drill holes for the springs, put all my bead rolling and tip edges, whatever I got to do on the way out, so I can just look at one piece at a time. So the other thing I want to show you is over on the other side for the master cylinder. I'll walk around there quick. On the master cylinder, being the floor's welded in solid, you have to leave a place in the back, because the bracket's up here to bolt it to. You have to leave room in the back so you can get this thing out. So it's a longer oval shaped piece. I'll try to give you a shot of that here. I'll pull this off. Pull my clecos out quick. Okay. As you can see, I got a longer hole there, so when you unbolt it, that the master cylinder will come out of the floor. And then I determine where I want the step to be. I try to typically keep an inch around the master cylinder, you know, inch off the back hole, and then I make this transition piece that will flip over and fit against the master cylinder better. And I'll bolt this in with 832 screws in 4 spots, and I'll put a bead of silicone around the master cylinder just to keep some of the dirt from blowing in the car. But that's the kind of stuff you got to look for. And in the clutch area, to make this work, you can see the cross shaft goes there to work the bell housing. I make this slot long so it can pivot up through the floor to get this piece out. So basically, you know, you pull your clutch rod off and it'll swing up. It's hitting on that cleco right now, but it'll swing up, and then you can pull the Zeus fasteners out and get that piece out as well. So, and you can see how I sort of notched around the shifter. I kept it as tight as I can, but with these monstrosities, it's sort of hard to, you know, it's hard to cover them up. You can't put a boot on them. You know, the whole idea is you've got to be able to service a thing between rounds, so this all has to come apart easy. But that's where we're at with Greg's car. Like I say, today I'm going to disassemble everything and get all the bead rolling done and get it cleaned up and get the car shipped for powder coat. Thanks for watching.